Welcome to the Monday Monologue! And yay, I got a new turntable. I've been using this same Techniques SLB2 turntable for decades. It's a semi-automatic. It's got the removable head shell type tone arm. Unlike those P cartridge ones that, are junk. And, it's got an adjustable counterweight and adjustable tracking and this all the stuff you want. The only thing that was really missing was the adjustable VTA, or the height of the tone arm platform, which not sure how much that really weighs into things, but people seem to get really obsessed with that. So I thought, hey, there must be something to that. And this turntable doesn't have that. And one of the reasons that prompted me to get a new turntable was after playing with cartridges, I had settled on a VM 540 ml AT phono cartridge, a moving magnet, and really liked it. It seemed to fit and work well with this turntable. And then I decided to try a moving coil cartridge. And decided if I'm going to do this, I'm not going to get a really cheap one. I'm going to get a really nice moving coil cartridge that has the same stylus as this AT moving magnet one, so that I knew I was comparing the moving magnet versus the moving coil and not the stylus design. So I got this OC9 XML, really nice AT cartridge, got a step-up transformer, and used it on this turntable. And guys, it just wasn't super. It made a difference, but it wasn't night and day like a lot of people claim they are. It definitely sounded cleaner, and the mid-range seemed a little more lively, but it just wasn't earth-shattering. And maybe it's not. But then I started thinking, is it my turntable? Have I kind of reached with this cartridge all this turntable has really got to give? And does this cartridge really want a different, tone arm angle, VTA, I think they call it, and I can't adjust that on this turntable? And so I decided, hey, in for a penny, in for a pound. I already spent almost $1,000 on this cartridge plus the step-up transformer, so I bought this new SL100C direct drive Techniques turntable. And there's a ton of turntables out there to choose from, and maybe these things don't have the, the panache that some of these, boutique kind of turntables have, but I really wanted to stay around $1,000. And the previous model of this was a little more than I wanted to spend, but it had a built-in phono stage, and it came with a higher end cartridge than this turntable comes with, but it still wasn't as good as this cartridge, so I didn't need the cartridge. And so when this one came out, I've had my eye on it for a while, been saving up my pennies, and I decided time to pull the trigger and get me a new turntable, and then see what this moving coil cartridge sounds like on a higher end table. And this one I was able to get the VTA adjusted where the tone arm's nice and level, where this one it's kind of leading downhill, which I don't think is ideal. And I think I could have shimmed this one up on this turntable and maybe got there, but then you're adding weight to the tone arm and all that stuff. I don't want to get into too much turntable tech, but I like the idea that it's like very electronically controlled. I don't have to deal with this little, rotating pot here to adjust the speed by the little strobe thing. And even when I get it adjusted, I notice it kind of, drifts back and forth a little bit. I don't know if the circuitry is just getting old or the motors. This thing was made back in the 80s. That was, 40, almost 50 years ago. And so, it's time for an upgrade. So, anyway, this looked like a good fit for me. I know Techniques knows what they're doing making turntables, so I decided to stick with what I knew was reliable and get one of these. This is tried and true technology. They've been using this same style tone arm, which is like the SL1200, forever. And, they may not be the equal of a $5,000 tone arm, but I don't think I need to go there. So I got this thing all set up. I'm going to do some testing soon between this table and this table and see if there is something to be had by, upgrading the turntable, having a higher quality tone arm, and having this adjustability that this tone arm and this turntable doesn't have. But one of the things too that made me want to upgrade is this turntable just looks really nice. And I know we're not supposed to be buying audio gear based on the appearance. And I guess that's going to be this week's rant is we know we all do it. We try to pretend like that, I don't care what my audio gear looks like. But we do. I think 90% of the people that want to have monoblock amplifiers do it because, hey, that's supposed to be high end and I like the way they look. When you can actually get the same performance with a split rail power supply in a stereo amplifier. I think part of the reason people are so hooked on preamps is they like just having that extra piece of gear sitting on their rack. And they think, hey, there's something missing if that's not up there. And preamps are supposed to be cool. I want one. And there's tons of other audio gear that fall into that same category. And an example of choosing a type of equipment to use is actually detrimental to the performance of your equipment. And I've got a perfect example of this sitting on the table right beside me. These 274B tubes that come in the R300. These are not high-end tubes. These are rectifier tubes. They convert AC to DC. They're not in the signal path, and especially on a single-ended amp, there shouldn't be any sag because the current stays the same. So these have very little to no impact on the sound, but people still insist that these things are in the amplifier. And the reason why is they match the 300B tube. And so they look cool sitting in there. They look big and powerful and manly or whatever they are. And the manufacturer understood that they would sell more amps if they put this tube in them. And consumers were demanding it for the appearance. And it actually ended up causing problems with the amplifier because these are old school design. They need a very small first capacitor. They were designed back when they were putting 10 Henry filtering chokes and everything. And modern equipment's not doing that. They don't have a choke on the top of the amplifier. And so these really can't do what they're supposed to do, but they look cool. And so people put them in their amps or they want them in their amps. And that's an example of, you're hurting the performance of your system for appearance sake. And we all like cool looking gear. I mean, one of the things I strive when I'm building my DIY stuff is for them to look cool. And I'll admit, I built that 47 pentode globe tube amp and insisted on using globe tubes, even though I know that they're lower performance than the ST bottle versions, because the globe tubes just look cool to me. And I wanted to see if I could make an amp that sounds good with them. And that was another example of hindering the performance of the gear potentially just because of the appearance. And so we really do need to be careful when we're doing this stuff. It's like, is it about the looks or is it about the sound? And I think it's a combination of both. Another example of doing something probably mostly for the looks, or the head shells that I've been using in my turntables. I've been using these Yamamoto, wood head shells. And I get the idea, or like the idea, that head shells made out of wood, and so it dampens any kind of harmonics that might be between the cartridge and the tone arm. But I don't know if that's a good thing or not. But they look cool. And I'm probably going to keep using them just because I like the way they look. And so just be aware of that, guys. When we're out shopping and buying stuff and looking at stuff. I know speakers are the same way. A lot of times people, they want to buy the biggest speaker they can find, or they buy some because they're shaped like a drum, or they look like a mushroom, or I don't know, or it's these flat panel electrostatic speakers. And I'm not sure then if we're actually doing it because it sounds good, or we're doing it from the aesthetics. And is that part of why it sounds good is because it looks good and our brain's translating that into what it should sound like? So just throwing that out there, that it's easy for your brain to get fooled into thinking something that looks better sounds better. So, channel update. I did have some oral surgery done last week, and that's why there was no videos out there. I was pretty incapacitated for a few days. But I'm feeling better now. I've got the KT120 monoblock powered up and ran a frequency and power sweep on it, and it's close to what I want to see it doing. I need to do some fine tuning, but it put out 14 watts, and I think it was 3% harmonic distortion. I want to try to get that down to 2. I need to play with the feedback loop some. I need to play with the bias point of the driver tube, potentially try maybe some different driver tubes, given that we're running it as a fixed bias instead of a cathode bias. And so we need to make sure we have the plate resistance of the pentode that's triode strap that matches the load that's on it and all that stuff. But I'm kind of at a point where I need to take a little break from the KT120. I may do a short video on where we're at on it, but I need to jump back onto the R300. And I know there's some people that are chomping at the bit to like, hey, you kind of teased us with this R300 stuff and then you just dropped it. Well, I've been thinking about it. I've been posting it on some forums, some questions and stuff, and trying to gather some ideas from the DIY community and then try to come up with the best solution. I guess that's one other thing I want to touch on today. I don't want to discount the impact that the DIY community has on this channel and the stuff that we show on it or that I showcase. There's a lot of times when I'm working on a project that I'll go on one of the DIY forums and ask questions of people that are much smarter about this stuff than I am and get their input on, hey, what's a good solution for this? And then implement it into the project. And sometimes it comes from 4 or 5 different people, or the inspiration does. And so if I don't individually credit the people, a lot of times they're just using, Hey Dude 27 or something. I don't know who these people are, so it's hard to give them credit. But I want to thank all the people in the DIY community that helped me out by, giving me ideas and stuff. And I do have some fresh ideas to try, and we're going to get working on that next week. And so, anyway, I hope you're enjoying this content. Hope you're enjoying my channel. If you are, please subscribe. Please like the video, and we'll see you on the next Monday Monologue.